What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you with another solo video today. You know the drill. It's Wednesday. We're going through every matchup, every player, every position group. We're talking about start-sit decisions, flex players, players that you can drop, all that good stuff. Before I get into today's video, if you guys wish to support us in free ways, you can do so by hitting the button that looks like this. Comment any of your thoughts down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Nick Donahue is the reigning first comment champion. If you wish to support the channel financially, you can do so at patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Link is in the description. As always, there's timestamps in the description as well. So if you want to know just about a specific player, specific game, go to the timestamps and check out that game that you're looking for. Now let's hit the intro. All right, now one last thing before we get into it. You guys already know Jock Market, our official sponsor. Jock Market is the new way to play daily fantasy. Jock MKT is how it's actually spelt. It's where daily fantasy sports become a stock exchange. And how it works basically is each NFL Sunday or before any primetime game, there'll be an IPO just like the regular stock market where you can bid on your favorite players based on how well you think they're going to do, how well they're going to perform that week in fantasy and so forth. You buy and sell shares of players with other users in real time. If you have a good first half for Lamar Jackson, for example, maybe you want to sell him in the second half because you think RG3 or something is going to take over, and vice versa. If someone's having a down first half, maybe you can buy low on them and get a nice profit that way. On Jock Market, you make money every hour, every minute, every second of every game. Daily contests are live not just for the NFL, but for NBA and PGA as well. Take control of your fantasy sports experience. Right now is the easiest time to play. Free contests where you stack chips. If you're in Canada like myself and you can't play paid contests yet, you can still play free contests, stack chips, and climb the leaderboards and make money that way. Or if you're in the US, you can do paid contests where you're actually earning real cash. Download now in the App Store. Android is coming very soon. All right. So before, I forgot to mention this last week, but before we get into this, I'm just going to talk about the teams that are on buys this week. So the Seahawks, the Chargers, the Saints, and the Raiders are all on bye this week. That's a lot of fantasy running backs because you're missing Jacobs and Carson and Kelly and Jackson and Kamara. So, I mean, obviously the running back position is going to be a little bit more scarce than it was last week. So there's no Thursday night football on account of the Bills and Chiefs game being moved to Monday night. So now we have a Monday night doubleheader. There actually is no Thursday night football this week, so there will not be a live stream for me and Danny. This past week we didn't have a live stream because it was Canadian Thanksgiving, so it was a holiday. We didn't feel like doing it. Anyway, into the 1 p.m. games. Denver at New England. This game was actually supposed to happen last week, but because of the whole COVID scares with the New England Patriots, it got moved to this week, and the Patriots and Broncos were on bye last week. So, quarterback-wise, sit Drew Lock, who actually is expected to play in this game. They expect Drew Lock to play, but don't start him because he's coming off an injury, and it's the Patriots' defense. Cam Newton should be cleared COVID protocols and all that kind of stuff, so you can definitely start him with confidence. Both quarterbacks, as I mentioned, they have question marks on whether or not they're going to play, but I'll start Cam, who's averaging nearly 12 rush attempts per game and has 4 touchdowns on the ground on top of anything that he does passing. So he's clearly a great option to start at quarterback. Running back wise, okay, so I made this before Melvin Gordon got arrested. So if you guys haven't heard, Melvin Gordon was actually arrested for a DUI or whatever, and he was speeding at the time as well. As of right now, if he plays, I would say start Melvin Gordon, sit Phillip Lindsay, and flex Damian Harris. But if Melvin Gordon is out, then you can start Phillip Lindsay. And I would say the same rationale as last week, assuming Gordon is playing. Gordon is the feature back. Lindsay will work in, but probably not enough to make him startable. And again, if Gordon is out, then this is all kind of out the window, and Lindsay is probably startable. If you're willing to play Russian roulette with the Patriots running backs, then you can start Damian Harris, but I'd probably avoid the rest of them. I don't really want to start James White, Rex Burkhead, any of those other guys. I'll go with Damian Harris because he's shown the most in terms of like flashing and stuff, and maybe he gets a bigger role on account of the 100-yard game that he had 2 weeks ago. So wide receiver wise, not a lot of great wide receiver options in this game. I think Edelman and Judy are the only two that people are actually going to be willing to start. Edelman's going up against Isang Bassi, which is advantage Edelman by about 12%. And Judy going up against Jonathan Jones is actually advantage Jonathan Jones by about 20%. So Judy should be a low-end wide receiver 3 against a difficult slot corner. I think he's still startable because of the volume and all that, but I would temper expectations for him, or temper expectations, not tamper. Edelman hasn't been nearly as good as I thought he'd be coming into this season, but this is a solid matchup, so he is in my top 30 receivers, and I expect him to probably have like a a 7 for 100 yard game and maybe he gets into the end zone or whatever. So he could have a pretty solid one in this one. Noah Fant is the only tight end of note in this game. You start him if he plays. According to what I've read, he's kind of a long shot last week and hasn't been cleared to practice yet. So I'd imagine he'll be kind of questionable heading into this game with maybe a 50-50 shot of playing. And then again, as I mentioned, if he does play, he's probably a top 12 tight end. You can start him with confidence. Houston at Tennessee. Both quarterbacks are strong starts in this game. You saw Ryan Tannehill absolutely light up the Buffalo Bills defense last week or yesterday as I'm recording this. Both guys have been over 5 points per game, better against bottom half pass defenses, both Deshaun Watson and Ryan Tannehill. And we love that for quarterbacks because in Tannehill's case specifically, you know when to start him and when to sit him. And even in Deshaun Watson's case, some people were ballsy enough to sit him against Pittsburgh, and you probably looked like a genius if you were. But yeah, both guys are going to be very, very usable in this game because I expect this one to have one of the higher over-under totals of the week. And there should be a lot of points scored. And we saw kind of Deshaun Watson look a little bit rejuvenated with Bill O'Brien out of the coaching staff there and Romeo Crennel taking over. Running back wise, David Johnson and Derrick Henry fire both of those guys up. DJ was back to his usual snaps after an odd 55% of snaps in week 4 when Duke Johnson returned. But it looks like he's back up to his normal like 80% snap share. So you can definitely start him as an RB2 because he just gets way too much volume not to be able to be started. And then Derrick Henry had a little bit of a down game as far as the Bills and Titans game goes. He kind of saved his day with the 20-yard touchdown that he had. But Derrick Henry, I'm not concerned about at all. I think the offense is becoming a little bit more pass heavy, which, to be fair, we did predict that. We said they were so run heavy last year that they were going to regress to the mean positively and become a more pass happy offense. And that's coming true. That is exactly what's happening. They're running a lot of play action with AJ Brown now back. They're probably going to continue that kind of pace. And maybe Henry's volume takes a little bit of a downtick as compared to what we thought it would be. But nonetheless, he's still a great option. I talked about AJ Brown already, but you definitely can start him coming off the performance that he had against Buffalo. He'll likely see shadow coverage from Bradley Roby. According to PFF, that's an advantage 23% to AJ Brown. So he should be fine in that one. For the Texans wide receivers, I'll have the matchups on the screen right now, but Cooks has the worst matchup on the field. So that downgrades him to kind of like a middling wide receiver 3 for me. Despite the huge game that he had last week, Jonathan Joseph is a much better corner than the likes he was going up against on Jacksonville. And Randall Cobb surprisingly has like a great matchup in this one. So I think if you're looking for a deep DFS play or you just want to, maybe you have a lot of people on bye or something, I think you can actually flex Randall Cobb and just pick him up off the waiver wire. He might be available and just throw him right into your lineup because the Chris Jackson is who he's going up against. I've literally never even heard of that guy. So Randall Cobb, and he's always been a consistent, like he'll catch like 5 passes a game and maybe he gets into the end zone and saves your day. Tight end wise, you always say no to Texans tight ends, just like drugs. And then you could start Jonnu Smith. And Jonnu Smith, finally, ECR has him in the top 5 where he belongs. I've been saying this all season. Jonnu Smith is exactly what you want out of a fantasy tight end. He's basically Jared Cook on steroids. He'll catch 4 to 6 passes like Jared Cook, but he's a freak with big plays. He'll take something 75 yards like we saw in week 2. He has the highest red zone target share of any tight end in the NFL right now. And he gets manufactured touches. So he gets like screen passes and they'll run him on like jet sweeps in the red zone and stuff. Like he's just like Arthur Smith is just using him perfectly. And I think that like Arthur Smith, if you don't know who that is, that's the Titans offensive coordinator, might be a head coach after this season. As I mentioned, Jonnu Smith is everything you want from a tight end. And this is probably my biggest W of the preseason because a lot of people were just looking over him for whatever reason. And I had him as a top 6 tight end going into the season. And as a result, I own him in like literally every league that I'm in. So Cleveland at Pittsburgh, quarterback wise, you sit Baker Mayfield because you usually sit Baker Mayfield, but especially in this one. And then I think you start Ben Roethlisberger. Browns defense has been giving up a lot of points to the quarterback position. And as far as I'm concerned with the weapons that Ben has, you cannot sit this dude. He's over 225 yards and 2+ touchdowns in every game so far. And his weapons core gets deeper every single week. Chase Claypool is emerging as one of the best rookie receivers in the league. Deontay Johnson, although banged up, is still a great number 2 receiver. Juju Smith-Schuster had a tough matchup after Johnson got out. Darius Slay went on to Juju Smith-Schuster. So that was a little bit of a freak thing. And then Eric Ebron's emerging as a great pass-catching tight end. Ben has more weapons than he has probably had in a while. So I think you can definitely start him as a top 12 quarterback going forward with confidence, especially in this game. From the running back position in this matchup, you could start both guys with certainty, obviously. 15 plus carries and 2 plus receptions. And every one of the past 3 games so far for James Conner, he's getting the usage that James Conner always gets when he's healthy. In terms of the Browns backfield, without Nick Chubb, Hunt was exactly what we hoped for. I'll put this on the screen right now, but Ian Hartz tweeted out the running back usage of Kareem Hunt. 69% of snaps, 20 carries, 4 targets, 24 opportunities without Nick Chubb in the lineup. That's awesome. Johnson also, Dearness Johnson didn't really get any work until Kareem Hunt had cramps in the fourth quarter and he had to be taken out of the game. Otherwise, Kareem Hunt's stat line probably would have had like an 80% snap share, which is exactly what we expect without Nick Chubb in the lineup. Wide receiver wise, and quickly on Dearness Johnson, I think you can desperation start him, but I don't want to start him against this Pittsburgh front because if they do anything well, it is stop the run. They're probably the best run defense in the league. Them and Tampa and the Colts are like the 3 run defenses you really want to stay away from. So I probably wouldn't start Dearness Johnson in this matchup, but I know running backs are just completely decimated right now, so you might have to and bite the bullet there. Wide receiver wise in this game, you start Odell and Juju Smith-Schuster with certainty, and then I'm operating under the assumption that Deontay Johnson is not going to play in this one. He left the game with a back injury. So I would say you flex Chase Claypool in that case, and then you can also flex Jarvis Landry. As I mentioned, if Deontay doesn't play, you can start both Claypool and Juju as top 30 guys. And if Deontay Johnson does play, then Claypool is probably downgraded to a low-end wide receiver 3, who's probably still flexible. And Juju and Deontay Johnson are top 25 guys. So that's kind of like a long-winded way of saying I would probably start all 3 of these guys if they're healthy. The matchups are as follows. Juju on Kevin Johnson. Chase Claypool is set to go against Denzel Ward, which is obviously the best corner on the Browns. And then Deontay Johnson on Terrence Mitchell. We'll have to wait to see if they expect to use Denzel Ward in any kind of shadow matchup. I'd imagine the only way that would happen is if Deontay Johnson plays and they would shadow him on Deontay Johnson, because I don't believe Denzel Ward travels to the slot against Juju. And I don't think after one game they're going to just be shadowing Chase Claypool. Odell, on the other hand, he came back to earth after his monster game. He still had like 9 targets and a solid outing, but he's still a top 26 guy going forward. And Jarvis is probably one of a million wide receiver 3s on any given week that you can plug into your lineup. So I would say, yeah, you could definitely throw him into your lineup if you need a flex starter. But you'll probably have to go to my rankings to see who I would start over him and stuff, because there's just so many of these Jarvis Landry types that are just interchangeable every single week depending on the matchup. So yeah, you could start Jarvis Landry, but I'm not like overly confident in him either. The matchups for that game are as follows as well. Jarvis Landry going up against Mike Hilton, who's actually been pretty solid this season. Odell Beckham against Steven Nelson. This is the way you beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. You can't run on them, but they have given up top 5 PPR points per game numbers to the wide receiver position. So this isn't as tough of a matchup as a lot of people would probably assume it is, knowing that like just the Steelers defense and Steelers pass rush is just so good that you just assume that like the whole the Browns offense just has terrible matchups. So the wide receiver position has actually done fairly well against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I wouldn't be too worried about Odell and Jarvis in this one. From the tight end position, as I mentioned, both of these guys are streamable tight ends. Hooper and Ebron, you can use them as like top 16 options each. They both got off to kind of slow starts in the NFL season, but recently they've both seen more volume, making them viable starters. Any tight end that gets 5, 6, 7 targets a game is going to be a top 15 tight end. That's just how the position works. It's really scarce, and there's just not a lot of good options. And both of these guys have seen that kind of volume over the past couple of weeks, so don't be too concerned about rolling them out into your lineup. And again, if you want to know who I would start them over and all that kind of stuff, we'll have a start-sit show before Sunday football kicks off in the morning, and as well, our rankings will be posted as probably early as you're seeing this on our website, and we'll put that link in the Discord and Patreon and stuff, all that kind of good stuff. So Baltimore at Philadelphia, the next game. So start Lamar and sit Wentz. Don't panic on Lamar yet. I know people who drafted Lamar Jackson are probably panicking right now because you probably spent like an early 3rd round pick on the dude, but it is worth noting that like Lamar isn't running nearly as much as he did last year. He's only eclipsed 10 rush attempts one time this season, while he did it in 10 of 16 games last year. And most of the ones he didn't do it in, I believe like 3 or 4 of the games he didn't eclipse 10 rush attempts in last year was because the Ravens were absolutely just slaughtering other teams and they took Lamar out of the game. So, I mean, Lamar is running less and the Ravens offense in general is running less, and all that kind of segues into the running backs. I don't want to start any of these guys. Not only do the Ravens running backs have a different guy lead the backfield in snaps. It was Gus Edwards last week, by the way. They are also second in the NFL in neutral script pass percentage at 62% compared to dead last year at 44%. So what that means is when the game is close, when they're within 7 points either way or the other, they're not running the ball as much as they were last year, like a significant amount, like an 18% different an 18% difference in terms of run to pass splits. They are passing the ball at a much higher clip this year. And I don't know if that's because like people are starting to figure out Greg Roman's offense, Lamar Jackson. Like I have no idea what that means. All I know is that these running backs are not nearly as valuable as they would have been last year, as is Lamar Jackson, as far as I'm concerned, from a running perspective. So Lamar Jackson was my QB1 going into the season. It's not looking like he's going to finish there, to be honest, because he's relying much more on his passing than his rushing, which, I mean, I don't think is very smart of the Ravens to be doing that, but maybe they know something that I don't. Wide receiver wise, flex Hollywood Brown and you sit all Eagles receivers. So if you got balls to do this, you may even want to sit Hollywood Brown, because Darius Slay has been a menace to opposing wide receivers. And it might not be because Darius Slay is playing super well. It just could be because offenses aren't throwing at Darius Slay because they know the Eagles have no other cover guys. Wide receiver 30 on the week for me for Hollywood Brown. He's ECR 15. So I'm significantly lower on Hollywood Brown. If you have good options or if you're in a shallow league, then I would sit Hollywood Brown, because Darius Slay is probably going to shut him down, because he's done so with pretty much everyone he's faced this past season so far. And then as far as the Eagles guys goes, if Travis Fulgham does it in this matchup, then I'll believe in him. Until then, he's just a flash in the pan. I don't really care about Travis Fulgham. If you wasted your fab money on him, go ahead, throw him into your lineup and see what happens. But I'll say that I was wrong after this game if he goes off again. From the tight end position, Andrews is obviously an auto start. You start him every week, but and you start Zach Ertz in this game. I know everyone's kind of down on Zach Ertz because he's had bad matchups. The one thing I have to say about it is hashtag stop ranking Ertz as a top 5 tight end 2020. ECR consistently ranks him as top 5, and I don't know why, because he has not played nearly to that level. He's no longer the elite fantasy tight end he was, and he needs to be ranked appropriately for that. Probably top 10 if I had, like where I have him at 10. But this is still the tight end position we're talking about. He's still better than most of the options that you're going to find out there. And hopefully you traded him for Jonnu 2 weeks ago, like I told you to. But Zach Ertz is not an every week start. You can actually sit Zach Ertz if you have a better tight end option, or you can maybe try and trade him based on name value or something. But his value is probably the lowest it's ever been. And I don't really know when Dallas Goedert's coming back, but whenever he does come back, I think Dallas Goedert's going to be the tight end to own in this offense going forward. All right, to the next game. Washington at New York Giants. You sit both quarterbacks because they're both terrible. Never start a Washington quarterback. And Daniel Jones hasn't thrown a passing touchdown since week 1. He's been awful. Like, he's been so bad that they're making the decision to get Trevor Lawrence this year a lot easier, because, I mean, if they want, they can just fall ass backwards their way into the first overall pick, and Trevor Lawrence is going to be a New York Giant, because Daniel Jones is not playing like a franchise quarterback. He's not playing like the quarterback that, to be honest, I thought he would play like. I thought he'd be a lot better. I know he's had a tough schedule, but I thought he might have like a mini breakout season and at least be good for fantasy. He has not played well at all. He looks frantic. He looks like he looks bad. So don't start any quarterbacks in this game. Running back wise, you could flex Antonio Gibson and you can emergency flex Devontae Freeman. Maybe not an emergency flex, but you can flex Devontae Freeman. It's absolutely sickening that I can say you can flex Devontae Freeman, but that's what we're at this point in the season with the running back injuries that have happened, with a lot of players on bye this week. Freeman saw 20 opportunities last week, and I have to say he's worth a top 30 start, because a lot of people are going to have to start a guy like Devontae Freeman this week. And he's gone up in volume every week that he's been a New York Giant, and because he's seeing that much volume, you got to start him. If you have no better options. And again, check out my rankings to see who I would start over him. I'd start a lot of decent options over Devontae Freeman, but the volume is there in case you need an emergency flex. As far as Antonio Gibson goes, a guy who I would start over Devontae Freeman, he's still seeing his usual 14 to 18 touches, so he's definitely worth a flex. Antonio Gibson is playing well. He should have his role increase as the season goes on. For now, he's just a 14 to 18 touch guy who's kind of like do I start him this week kind of guy at the running back position. You never know when to actually start him. I would say throw him into your lineup more often than not if he's like a flex option, because the running back position, you're likely disadvantaged at that position. Wide receiver wise, you flex Terry McLaurin, and you also can flex Darius Slayton in this game. Terry McLaurin will 100% see James Bradbury in shadow coverage, who has held Amari Cooper, Robert Woods, and Allen Robinson in check the past couple weeks. So, I mean, you don't sit Terry McLaurin because he's a stud, but James Bradbury has been excellent so far this season. And I would not be shocked if Terry McLaurin has an absolute dud in this game, especially considering just it's the Washington offense, and they could just lay a dud any time that they go out there. Darius Slayton is set to see Kendall Fuller, who's been quite good for, as has the entire Washington secondary, to be honest, against the wide receiver position. So I actually have him significantly lower than consensus. Consensus has him 11 spots higher than I have him. I have him kind of like at that wide receiver 35-ish range where he's like you could flex him, but he's not like a high-end start. Whereas ECR has him like in the 20s, and I don't really agree with that. The Washington secondary has actually been quite good against receivers, and they did a good job against the 2 Rams guys last week. Tight end wise, you can stream Logan Thomas and stream Evan Ingram. And I know that sounds disgusting. Just like Zach Ertz, why the fuck are we ranking Evan Ingram in the top 6 still? He's still in the top 6 in ECR. He's a low-end streamer based on his play. He's top 18 option for me. That's where I have him. I have him tight end 18. He's still startable, but come on with that ranking, ECR. Like, I can't believe you're still ranking him in the top 6. This is not preseason. We know what Evan Ingram is right now. He's playing like trash in a terrible offense. I don't want to start him every single week. If I can help it, I would drop Evan Ingram. But the problem with dropping Evan Ingram is like, who are you going to pick up? Because Evan Ingram is a bad tight end option, but there's a lot of bad tight end options out there. Hopefully you have a different option and you can drop Evan Ingram, but chances are what you drafted Ingram, you probably didn't draft the second tight end because you expected Evan Ingram for as long as he's on the field to be really good. And he just hasn't been like that. Logan Thomas is also quite disgusting at this position. But again, tight end is a gross position to have. And he's still a streamable option in the top 20 due to volume and snap share and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, again, I'd love to drop Logan Thomas, but there's chances are you probably don't have that many great tight end options outside of him. But if you have a guy like Rob Gronkowski or Jimmy Graham or something, I would absolutely be dropping both of these guys because I think they're both trash. Anyway, Atlanta at Minnesota, the next game that we have on the docket here. You could start both guys in this matchup. Kirk Cousins, actually my start of the week at the quarterback position. Despite the low volume for Kirk Cousins, he's actually been better than Matt Ryan in this game, especially lately. If faced with the choice, I'd actually start Kirk Cousins, who's my quarterback 10, over Matty Ice, who's my quarterback 15. Running back wise, all right, fine. Todd Gurley's looked kind of good. I know. I said it. You can start him as a top 15 options going forward, but I'm not ranking him in the top 12 just to spite his ass. He played Kara frickin' Lina, who can't stop Danny on an outside zone. If he does it one more time, then I'll actually believe in Todd Gurley, but like he still looks slow. I know he's like getting good yards per carry and he's scoring touchdowns, but he still doesn't look explosive. Like I can't willingly rank this guy in the top 12. If he does it again, I'll eat my words. But again, in this game, Dalvin Cook is expected to be out. So you could start Alexander Madison with confidence. Madison catapults into, top 15 range, probably top 12 range, to be honest, with Dalvin Cook expected to be out for this game. From the wide receiver position in this matchup, you could start Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and Calvin Ridley, and I would sit the tertiary guys. So Russell Gage, Zacchaeus, any other Minnesota wide receiver. On the screen right now, you'll see the matchups for the Minnesota guys. Adam Thielen going up against AJ Terrell, actually one of the highest. I think it's the second biggest advantage of any wide receiver on the slate. Jefferson had a down game, but he should rebound in a smash spot against Isaiah Oliver. And then as far as the Falcons matchups goes, Russell Gage going up against Jeff Gladney is like the lowest advantage for a wide receiver in this game. Calvin Ridley going up against Mike Hughes. Gage, and on Russell Gage, Gage is borderline droppable after one, the Falcons passing offense does not look nearly like the fantasy bonanza that we thought it was going to be. And two, Gage only has caught 2 passes in each of the last 3 games. So, Russell Gage is still ranked pretty highly in ECR. I disagree. I don't want to start this dude. Even though Julio's out, even though Hayden Hurst is underperforming, I just don't want to start this guy. Ridley is the only guy you can start on, you can count on until Julio comes back, and then you could count on Julio as well. But tight end wise, as I just mentioned, Hurst is exactly where Ingram is. I would love to say just drop Hayden Hurst, but there's no way that you can replace him very easily. He's still a top 20 tight end. ECR is still way too high on this guy too. He's still in like the top 12 tight ends. I have him as like in that range with Evan Ingram and Logan Thomas. He's like my tight end 16. So you can still start him, but I don't think he's like a smash start like ECR apparently does. Detroit at Jacksonville, quarterback-wise, you start them both. They're both pass-happy quarterbacks and bad pass defenses. Yippee-ki-yay. Gardner Minshew and Matt Stafford should have great games in this one. Running back, nope, on the Lions. But keep stashing DeAndre Swift until Matt Patricia gets fired because it's probably going to happen soon. And fire up James Robinson as a top 10 guy. I'm still not on board with the ranking James Robinson as a top 5 running back like ECR is. I'm ripping on ECR a lot today. Anyway, but he is definitely a top 10 guy going up against a run defense, giving up 28.6 points per game to running backs, which is dead last in the NFL. So the Detroit Lions, minus Kenyon Drake, have not shut down a single running back in the NFL this year. And I think James Robinson's in for a big one. As I mentioned with DeAndre Swift, he's getting like a small pass catching role similar to Jerick McKinnon, but you can't put him in your lineup yet. You just got to keep stashing him until Matt Patricia gets fired, and maybe they'll give this ball to Swift more after that happens. Either way, you just don't drop the guy because he is still valuable. He still could be a valuable piece on the back half of the season. Wide receiver, start Golladay and start Shenault. So my assumption here is that I'm assuming DJ Chark will be out, considering we haven't heard anything about his ankle injury, at least nothing that I could find. Golladay has the number one matchup according to PFF. He's going up against some human being named Chris Claybrooks, and he's wide receiver 30 in ECR. I have no idea what they're thinking. I have him in the top 8. I don't know if I'm missing something, if he's hurt or something. Like, he looked fine in his return, and he has a great matchup. He's in my top 8 receivers. You could definitely start Golladay with no concerns whatsoever. Shenault becomes a must start against Desmond Trufant if Chark is out. If Chark plays, then both guys are flex starts as top 36 guys, in my opinion. Tight end wise in this game, start of the week is TJ Hawkinson, and don't start a Jacksonville tight end because Tyler Eifert left the game with like a neck injury or something. And you know Tyler Eifert, he probably won't return from that. TJ Hawkinson had a bit of a down yardage game in week 4 before their bye, but his efficiency and volume numbers are that of like a top 10 guy at the position. So I think you can feel confident rolling him out going forward, especially in a top 6 matchup against the tight end position in Jacksonville. Cincinnati at Indianapolis. Sit of the week is Joey Burrow, and never in a million years would I ever start Phillip Rivers. So Joe Burrow struggled last week against a solid defense in the Ravens. The Colts have been the worst matchup against quarterbacks in the entire NFL this year. So I am not starting Joe Burrow. Not even if I can help it. I would play like borderline guys over Joe Burrow. I'd rather play Daniel Jones than Joe Burrow this week. I think he's going to get annihilated against this Colts defense. Running back position, start them both. So Jonathan Taylor and Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon, not only did he have 32 opportunities to Gio's 2 last week, he did this in a horrible game script. They were down from the very beginning. They were throwing the ball like crazy, which we expected to happen. But I thought Joe Mixon would be taken off the field a little bit more for Gio Bernard, and that really was not the case. I dare say, but he might be matchup proof going forward. If in this bad of a game script, they're going to still use Joe Mixon like crazy. Thankfully, we bullied Zach Taylor into actually using Joe Mixon via Twitter. It worked. Good job for fantasy players. So JT is still a start for volume, but he is not playing like a back-to-back 2,000-yard rusher. Can we stop ranking this guy in the top 8 of ECR too? Because that's where he is. He's my running back like 17 right now. He does not deserve to be in the top 10. He's not getting there until he actually plays like the Nick Chubb comparison that we all gave to him. He's not playing good at all. He looks slow. He looks like he's thinking too much. He's got to play better. I'll put this on the screen right now, but I tweeted this out the other day. Notable running backs and avoided tackles per attempt. There was 37 qualified, a minimum 35 attempts on the season. You could see JT is 34 out of 37. He is not breaking tackles. He's not making people miss. And you see some of the other guys up there that are doing that at a high rate. Mike Davis, Devin Singletary, Antonio Gibson, David Montgomery, some of these other guys. They look a lot better than Jonathan Taylor, and Jonathan Taylor really needs to start playing better because he's borderline like bust category in terms of like, not like the fantasy wise, just for like an NFL running back. He should be playing a lot better than he is. Anyway, to the wide receiver position in this game, you start Tyler Boyd, and I think you can flex T. Higgins and T.Y. Hilton in this game. The buy window on T. Higgins is probably closing, if not already closed, as we expect AJ Green to be either fully out for this game or limited with a hamstring. You guys all saw the video where AJ Green doesn't even make the tackle. Like he's probably going to get traded soon or something. What that does is it makes T. Higgins the prototypical X in this offense, which is exactly what we wanted, because some people, not really myself, because I wasn't really a huge fan of T. Higgins coming out of school, but a lot of people actually compared him to AJ Green. And if he's playing the AJ Green role, he's going to get AJ Green volume. And as far as TY, actually, real quick on the matchups for the Bengals, Tyler Boyd has the greatest matchup, obviously, against Kenny Moore. T. Higgins going up against Rocky Sin, and they expect AJ Green to play for whatever reason, so they're going to have him on Xavier Rhodes. And again, Xavier Rhodes has actually played quite well this year, so that actually is a tougher matchup than you might think it is. T.Y. Hilton finally showed something last week. I'm willing to start him as a top 40 guy, but I'm not excited about it. So I think you can flex him, but again, you're relying on Phillip Rivers to get him the ball. Just remember that. Tight end wise, I think you can stream Drew Sample and then drop the Indianapolis tight ends. Sample should see an uptick in targets with AJ Green out or limited. And then the Indianapolis tight ends are complete tight end by committee. Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox, Trey Burton, all these guys are just interchangeable. Plus, Phillip Rivers fucking stinks. So I'm not relying on any of these dudes. I don't really want to. On to the next game. Chicago at Carolina. Quarterback-wise, nope. Absolutely not on Nick Foles. And then I think you can emergency stream Teddy Bridgewater. Sometimes you're really only as good as the weapons around you. I've often said this for quarterbacks, and Teddy's weapons are making him look very good. It's not a matchup that I would want to play him in, but he is my QB 20. And with all the buys, he is technically startable at the QB 20. Onto the running back position. All right, so the same exact tweet that I was talking about with Jonathan Taylor, you could see where Mike Davis and David Montgomery rank right at the top, right up there, 24% tackles avoided per attempt for David Montgomery and 36% for Mike Davis. And on David Montgomery, we saw workhorse usage from him on Thursday Night Football again. Compared since Tariq Cohen has gone out, 81% of snaps, 67% of routes, 10 of 13 RB carries, and a 19% target share in the game against the Bucs. And that was a terrible matchup for David Montgomery on the ground. Wide receiver wise in this game, you could start Allen Robinson and Robbie Anderson with confidence, and you can flex DJ Moore. Allen Robinson goes up against Rasul Douglas, yielding a 12% advantage in this matchup. And no worries starting him as a top 10 guy with the volume he's been getting since Foles took over. Again, on ECR, they still have DJ Moore over Robbie Anderson. Don't get stuck in your preseason takes. Not many people were higher on DJ Moore than I was. Even I'm willing to admit that Robbie Anderson has been the better guy. Robbie Anderson looks better. Robbie Anderson is getting more volume. Robbie Anderson's performing better. Like everything about Robbie Anderson is better than DJ Moore right now. I was really high on DJ Moore. Not anymore. Pun intended. So he has a solid matchup. DJ Moore does. So he's in flex territory for me at wide receiver 28. And Robbie Anderson is a must start. He's at my wide receiver 14. The matchups on the screen, you'll see Robbie Anderson going up against Kyle Fuller and DJ Moore going up against Jalen Johnson. They're both good matchups. But the Bears pass rush, as we saw against the Bucs, is pretty fierce. So I don't think the passing offense will be totally like going bananas in this game. And then tight end wise in this game, Jimmy frickin' Graham, start him. Probably the most 2020 thing ever is the fact that Jimmy Graham is an every week starter in fantasy at this point. As long as Foles is the quarterback, he's averaging almost 7 targets per game, and he has 3 touchdowns in 3 games Foles has appeared in. So Jimmy Graham, yeah, fire him up. He's a top 12 tight end. Like I don't know how we got here, but this is where we are. Jimmy Graham's a top 12 tight end. All right, 4 p.m. games. New York Jets at Miami Dolphins. There's only actually 2 4 p.m. games this week, and no one's going to watch this one because of the other one that's on. But quarterback-wise in this game, you don't start Joe Flacco, who they've ruled Sam Darnold out again for this game, so yuck. And then you can stream Ryan Fitzpatrick. To me, this has a feeling of a Fitz letdown game because we all kind of believe classic Fitzpatrick that he's like excellent and he's this great quarterback now, but you got to be willing to stream him against this putrid Jets defense. So he is definitely a streamable quarterback in this game, top 20 option in my opinion. Running back wise in this game, my start of the week is Myles Gaskin, and you can flex Frank Gore. Gaskin has seen 60% of snaps plus in every single game thus far, and I think he's one of the better buy lows in fantasy because his volume is RB1 levels. It's not even like RB2, like low end RB2. No, like he's getting RB1 volume. He's 5th in the NFL in targets at the running back position, 10th in weighted opportunities, number 2 in red zone touches, number 7 in route participation. He is getting excellent volume. And if his play increases at any point, or maybe Tua takes over and the offense gets better or something, he is going to be like a borderline, like where James Robinson is. Like he has that kind of potential. It's like, does anyone think James Robinson's significantly more talented than Myles Gaskin? Like they seem pretty interchangeable to me. So on the Jets side of things, the Jets cut Le'Veon Bell, which is kind of hilarious. Let me know where you think Bell goes in the comments. If you have any maybe insides tracks, I really hope he doesn't come to Tampa because we've pretty much collected every other running back, and I don't want any more. To me, this makes Frank Gore a flex start in this matchup as a top 30 guy. I don't like it's gross as hell, but he's probably going to get 20 carries just like Devontae Freeman. Jamison Crowder is facing Nick Needham in the slot, so you can definitely be starting him. He's good for one of the biggest advantages on the week at 38%. To the Dolphins side of things, Parker and Preston Williams, you can start Devontae Parker and then probably flex Preston Williams as well. Parker isn't a lock for great production by this matchup. I'll have that on the screen right now, but it is also one of the better ones. He's going up against Pierre Desir, which is a great great advantage for him, obviously. And then Preston Williams is a deeper flex play, like a top 45 receiver, but I do think you could throw him into your lineup if you have, if you need like a bye week filler, maybe you have DK Metcalf out or something like that. I think him going up against LaShawn Austin is pretty good. And then tight end wise in this game, so I was obviously wrong about Chris Herndon. Ryan Griffin actually outsnapped him this past week, so not great. Definitely drop any Jets tight ends that you have. And then Gesicki, he's my tight end 9 on the week. Yeah, he's up and down, but so is literally every tight end outside the top 3. This matchup is great against the Jets. Gesicki should do well this week, and if he doesn't, then I'd be a little concerned. But Mike Gesicki is still a pretty solid streamable top 12-ish tight end at the position, so definitely don't worry about starting him. And the reason no one's going to be watching that last game that I just talked about is because we have Tom Brady versus Aaron Rodgers going on at the same time as the only other game. Green Bay at Tampa Bay, quarterback, start both of them. While neither defense is really a smash matchup, the Bucs defense has been pretty good, as is the Packers defense. These are 2 future Hall of Fame quarterbacks with all their weapons returning healthy. Has to be a recipe for some kind of points to be scored in this game. So both Joneses in this game. Aaron Jones, you obviously start him. Ronald Jones, you basically flex or start him, whatever you want to call it. According to Bruce Arians, Fournette and Shady should be back for this game. However, Rojo having back-to-back 100-yard games, the second and third time it's happened in his career, should solidify his role as the primary ball carrier, at least for this week. Obviously, if he misses a blitz pickup, then he's probably going to be back in the doghouse. But for this week, he's the primary ball carrier. With Ronald Jones, you got to be looking at it a week over. He's a week-over-week player. You can't be like, okay, I have a top 15 running back for the rest of the season. Right now, he's a top 20 running back. Next week, he could be a top 40 running back. The week after, he might be completely irrelevant for fantasy. We have no idea. But with Ronald Jones, I have him in a couple of leagues. You got to look at him as a top 20 running back in this game, and then we'll see where we go from this time next week. On top of that, Green Bay is giving up 27.8 points per game to the running back position, second last in the NFL. So this is a great matchup for Ronald Jones, and I mean, whoever ends up carrying the ball in this game, will primarily be Ronald Jones, will probably do well in this game. Aaron Jones is going to go off in the receiving game in this one. Our defense's biggest weakness is pass catching running backs, and there's probably no other running back outside of Alvin Kamara in the league right now that is more productive as a receiver than Aaron Jones. So Aaron Jones will probably snap off in this game. You can definitely don't worry about sitting him because the Bucs are a bad matchup on the ground. They are, but he'll more than make up for that value in the receiving game. To the wide receiver position, Devontae Adams, you start him because I think he's going to be back and fully healthy in this one. Evans and Godwin, both back and fully healthy, I believe, in this one as well. You can start them. Both Adams and Godwin are coming off of injuries, so you got to monitor that. You downgrade them a slight amount, but both of them should slot into pretty significant roles. Godwin going in against Will Redmond, as you can see on the screen, instead of Tyler Johnson on this chart. I don't know why they're not including Chris Godwin here, even though Bruce Arians said he's going to play. You can see the matchups here. Mike Evans, I don't know if they're going to shadow Jair Alexander on him. I would imagine they probably will, but that's not like a complete loss. I don't think Mike Evans is going to get destroyed by Jair Alexander. The size difference alone is enough for Mike Evans to probably still have a good game. And then speaking of shadow coverage, Devontae Adams will likely see Carlton Davis in shadow coverage, who's solid, but again, Adams should still get his. We saw Allen Robinson still got his last week against Carlton Davis, even though Carlton Davis played fairly well. Tight end wise, you stream Gronk and Robert Tonyan in this one. Both guys are streamable as starting tight ends in a potentially high scoring game. Neither of them are like awesome options going forward for the rest of the season, but I think you can start both of them in this game. Sunday Night Football, you stream Jared Goff and you sit whoever the 49ers end up throwing out there at quarterback. Goff is probably the very definition of a streamer. This is a solid matchup against a banged up defense. So I have him as a top 16 guy this week. I think he's probably going to have a solid game in this one. To the running back position. So Raheem Mostert and Jerick McKinnon, we have I'll put the splits right on the screen right now, but Raheem Mostert played 53% of the snaps, had 14 opportunities, but Jerick McKinnon was significantly downgraded in this one, and as was Jeff Wilson. So I think the way you want to handle this backfield is the usage downgrades McKinnon to an emergency flex option going forward as a top 30 running back, and Mostert is a top 18 guy. And I think this makes Jeff Wilson completely droppable. You can't even think about starting that guy anymore. So it's just these two guys going forward with Mostert being the primary dude. And then for the Rams, I guess Henderson is the best guy to start. I would say he's the flexible one. He's the one you can put in your flex spot. I think Malcolm Brown is absolutely droppable. And you can hold Cam Akers, I guess, but I wouldn't go buying him thinking he's going to take over the backfield. As I've mentioned before, this is a full-blown committee, and it probably will be until an injury happens. Wide receiver-wise, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. You can start both of them. They're both solid starts and great matchups. On the screen right now, you'll see Cooper Kupp going up against Jamar Taylor, Robert Woods going up against Akella Witherspoon. Both of them, those are better matchups than they've had the last couple of weeks, and I expect both of them to have good games, which is why I like Goff this week. All right, Deebo Samuel going up against Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if we're going to see a shadow coverage from Jalen Ramsey or not, but if that happens, I would say Brandon Ayuk sees an upgrade as a result. Both guys are in my top 40 and startable regardless, though, so I think you can stream both of them or flex both of them in this matchup. To the tight end position, you can stream Tyler Higbee and you start George Kittle. Kittle is a monster. You start him every week. But Higbee, outside of one game, has been quite disappointing, to be honest, due to low volume of the Rams offense. The Rams are running at one of the highest percentages in the league. They're not passing nearly as much as they did last year. They passed the ball over 600 times last year, and they're probably not going to sniff that number this year. So, I mean, Tyler Higbee, I don't want to, again, he's not droppable. He's not bad. He's just not nearly as safe as we thought he was coming off the first couple games of the season. All right, to the first Monday Night Football game that we have this week, Kansas City at Buffalo. This should be a high-scoring one. Start both of the quarterbacks for the love of God. They're both top 5 quarterbacks. Do not ever sit any of them, ever. Running back-wise, you start both the top guys. I'm still not too worried about Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know some people are really worried about him. I'm not really worried because he had a touchdown called back due to a Travis Kelce offensive pass interference. That would have completely saved his day, and no one would be even talking about this. He honestly is just getting unlucky in the red zone. The biggest selling point for Clyde Edwards-Helaire coming into the season was the fact that Kansas City running backs have averaged nearly 2 touchdowns per game in the games that Patrick Mahomes has been the quarterback. And just for whatever reason, Clyde Edwards-Helaire hasn't gotten into the end zone. Volume is there, elusiveness, advanced analytics, all in Clyde Edwards-Helaire's favor. He just has to get into the end zone. And I can't tell you when it's going to happen. I can't tell you if it's going to happen, but I think it's going to happen because of the offense he's in. Singletary, on the other hand, was phased out last week due to game script, which is kind of concerning, but he's still a top 20 guy. Zach Moss, I don't know if he's going to be back or not, but either way, I still think Singletary's a top 20 guy in this matchup because there's going to be a lot of scoring. To the wide receiver position, you start Tyreek Hill, you can start Stephon Diggs, and I think you can flex Mecole Hardman as well. Those are the guys I feel most confident in. On the screen, you'll see the Kansas City wide receiver cornerback matchups. Tyreek Hill going up against Teron Johnson is just a huge advantage for Tyreek Hill. And then Mecole Hardman going up against Saron Neal. I don't really even know who that is. Also a big advantage for Mecole Hardman. This one should have a lot of points in this game, so you want a lot of pieces from this game, and I'm willing to flex Mecole Hardman, maybe even Demarcus Robinson, based on this decimated Bills secondary, and if Tre'Davious White's back, he'll probably be on Tyreek Hill, so keep that in mind, but we saw the Tennessee Titans absolutely just destroy this secondary. Josh Norman just got stiff-armed into retirement, hopefully. So I think all three of these main guys with Sammy Watkins out are actually borderline plays. Obviously with Hill, Hardman, and Robinson being the order that I would play them. Onto the Bills side of things, Cole Beasley, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, the matchups they have will be on the screen as well. Stephon Diggs going up against Charvarius Ward. Diggs is a must start, and I think you can even deep flex Gabe Davis if Brown is out again. So if John Brown's out, then I think you can deep flex Gabe Davis as a top 50 receiver. But if John Brown's back, I think you can start him pretty confidently as a top 40 guy. And then tight end wise, no analysis needed. You start Travis Kelce every week, and then you don't start Dawson Knox because he keeps dropping passes. To the second Monday Night Football game, and this game would have been a lot more exciting had Dak Prescott not gotten injured. But quarterback-wise in this game, you start them both still. Even though Dak Prescott's not in this game, I still think you start Andy Dalton as a top 20, top 15 option in this game. Because Dalton, and I said this for Teddy Bridgewater, Dalton inherits a supporting cast of weapons that locks him in for top 15 quarterback production, in my opinion. Dalton is a capable quarterback. He has never had even close to the amount of talent that he has around him right now. That includes his tight end, his wide receivers, his running backs. Dalton has never been surrounded with this kind of talent, and I think he's probably going to do well in this Cowboys system. And maybe that'll cause a lot of ruckus on Twitter, people saying don't pay Dak because Dalton's just as good. But either way, Andy Dalton is going to be a solid start in this matchup, and then obviously you start Kyler Murray every week. Running back wise, you start both guys, the main two guys, Drake and Zeke Elliott, and I think you can flex Chase Edmonds as well. Once again, another smash matchup for Kenyon Drake for him to disappoint humanity. But you got to start him. And back-to-back, you got to start him due to bye weeks, basically, because there's a lot of players out, and I doubt you have better options to start other than Kenyon Drake. Injuries and everything else, all this stuff makes him a top 20 guy still, even though he's been super disappointing. But Chase Edmonds is carving out a role, much like Jerick McKinnon's right now. This makes him a top 30 guy going forward. I think Chase Edmonds is a top 30 guy. You can flex him, borderline flex him every single week. He played a season high 45% of the snaps last week, which could be eating into Drake's role. And I think as the season goes along, that might continue. And then obviously Zeke Elliott, you start every week. to the Cowboys side of things at the receiver position. There's good matchups for the Cowboys receivers in this game. Patrick Peterson is likely going to shadow Amari Cooper, but Patrick Peterson has not been good this year, according to PFF. CeeDee Lamb going up against Byron Murphy in the slot, and Michael Gallup going up against Dre Kirkpatrick. There should be a lot of points scored in this game. Surprise, surprise with the Cowboys offense. If you want to screw around and start anyone other than DeAndre Hopkins on the Cardinals, I would suggest you play Christian Kirk as a top 50 kind of option. But again, I'd rather not screw around with anyone that's not DeAndre Hopkins on the Cardinals receiving core. By the way, DeAndre Hopkins sees Daryl Worley in coverage. It's a 25% advantage for him. So to the tight end position, finally, you start Dalton Schultz. He had a down game, obviously, in this one, but in the last game that they played, but he should get on track. If he doesn't see volume with Dalton now, that's when you got to start being a little bit concerned. Maybe it was just Dak elevating the offense to the point where there's like 4 fantasy relevant pass catchers. But either way, I do think Dalton Schultz is still a solid start. All right. That's it, guys. There's a long road. I'm a little bit sick right now. So if you see me, my head moving around like crazy, it's because I paused stuff to blow my nose and all that kind of stuff. But we got through it. So if you guys enjoyed this, make sure you hit the button that looks like this. Comment any of your thoughts down below. Where do you think Le'Veon Bell is going to go? What kind of start sit questions do you have this week? All that kind of stuff, comment it below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the bell icon if you want to be notified anytime we go live, anytime we post new videos, all that good stuff. Take it easy, guys. I'll talk to you next time.